Well, a bit of intro. Who am I? Ankit. I work as a DevOps. I work as a DevOps at like Berkshire Grey, which is like robotics, which does like robotic stuff. I am also the maintainer of a Jenkins X. Why is it like level 2? Because there are 2 horns there. That's like just the point. So what is like Jenkins X? It is not like Jenkins. We have a lot of people who come to our like Slack channels and keep on like asking us things about it. So we are completely like different thing. We are a CI/CD tool. I would probably say that we are like a platform. So we have a lot of like features. So we have CI, which is done using like Tekton. We have we are kind of like like Argo, but we have our own JX like gitops. We have like preview stuff. We have like secrets. So that's one of the reasons why it's not a tool, but instead like a platform. The whole point is to make the CNCF like landscape appear less like scary. If you have seen it, there's like too many things to choose. So you can either use that or you can try like Jenkins X. What's the problem that we are like trying to solve? So we produce a lot of like binaries. We have like images. We have terraform stuff, and so we are a software like factory so the way we like produce them, we use like GitHub, and we also have our own like GCP stuff. But the big question is, how do our end users know that all of these like binaries and Helm charts are actually are like coming from us and not from say Jenkins Y or something? Okay, where did I go? Great. Do we know what goes into building those things, and are they safe to use? Eventually, we want to help the end users of like Jenkins X have a secure by default chain. That's like the North Star. Internally, we use like GCP. We have Spot because it's cheap to use them. We run the latest like version of our own tool. Every time a test like passes, our cluster gets the newest thing. So we do tests so that we can catch it before like users of Jenkins X. We also have like an Amazon account, and we are in the process of like adding some tests there. We also have, we actually have, like a Helm chart, and you can use it and install it using on-prem clusters. So we support quite a bit of stuff. Where did we start? So initially, we had huge Docker containers. Some of like dependencies we had were should have just been like lines of code, rather than getting an external like package which is not like maintained anymore. We did not have like a SBOM, which is basically like a list of stuff that makes up your like binaries. We did not like sign things, and most likely we were Salsa like level 0 to 1. We were not 0, I guess, because we had like version control. We had like a scripted like build system, but we were not exactly 1 even, because we did not have like provenance. So let's start by taking a look at the JX like binary. You can see in left hand side, I guess. Anyways, it did not have like SBOMs. It's not signed. but if you just run the JX, like version, all you get is just this number. That means nothing to me. Like which branch was it made from? Which like commit SHA was it? Which like version of Go was it? So we, like the first thing we did was add more like stuff to it. Like if you now do a JX version, you know that it's built using Go. Well, it's built using Go 1.19. It's using the main branch, which is good, and in that branch, it's built on like it's built using this like commit SHA. What next? We had huge like some of the images we had were huge. Like one of them was 1.8 gigs, and we have got it to 104 like MB. So doing these kind of things, like these are like low-hanging fruits that we first got like sorted out. Also, we were using tags, and in some of the cases we were just using like latest. Instead, we are trying to use like the digest SHA. So some of the some of the tasks actually use like digest SHA now. Some of them at least use tags and not like latest. So it's still something that we are doing now. So what are software bill of like materials? They are like trending today. They're very like popular. Everyone like talks about them. And so that's where we were like, well, we need to have like a SBOM. So we started with Sift, and one of the like reasons we picked it was because we use like Go releaser. So Sift comes as the default like option for like for that tool. Of course, you can like swap it out, and that's fine. We also used like the JSON format. I have a sample like SBOM. Of course, it's great for like machines, but if you want to like take a look at it, it's hard. It's just a huge file, a lot of things inside, and I guess we can like take a look at one of them. So this is one of like the SBOM that we have. You can see. So this is it has a list of all like packages. This is for one of the package. You can see it has like a SPDX like ID. So that's just a hash. So every like package that you have in your BOM will have like a unique hash. It has the name, which is basically like name of the package. You can see that like the license is none. So that was a bit of like concerning for us, because in the end, if we have like a SBOM, but we don't know if we are using like a license which is not like open source like friendly, like then like it doesn't really make much sense for us. But that is an issue with Sift, and we will like talk about that soon. There is also like a CPE, which is the, well, it's actually not like package. It's the common platform enumerator. It is basically unique like ID. If you see like the CPE, it starts with A, which basically means that it's an app. It can also be H, which is for say like a hardware, basically a device, or it can be a O, which is for say like Ubuntu or any other thing. We have Go, which is like the vendor in this case. Well, in our case, it's like the language. Then we have compute, which is just like the package name, and then we have like the version of the package, which is 1.10.0. The like PURL is just a package like URL. Since we use Go, it just comes from the go.mod file. If you want to look at it more, this is basically the full file. And you can scroll, and it's a pretty big file. We are using SPDX like 2.2, which is not like the latest like version. Sift actually does not, like support it yet. There are, other tools that we are planning to, like switch to in case we don't get that from Sift soon. So what were, like the issues? As I said, all of, like license info is, like missing in Sift. So I tried to, like look at their code base to see actually why it's not there. Like, is it because there is some, like issue with us and not with them? And turns out that when they try to get the package, like info, they actually don't. They actually don't have a field for, like license, which is why it's always, like an empty slice. And so when they try to get the value, it's always none. So it also does not support version, like 2.3. So we are, like thinking if we should move away from Sift to something like, like KO or, like AppCo or just the Kubernetes, like SBOM tool. All of them, like support it now. But I think the most, like important thing is, so we have, like the SBOM, but then what? At this point, what we did was we have gripe, which like scans them and tries to find any, like vulnerabilities in them. But like what like we would like is maybe, like a cron job that runs, like once a day and tries to, like tell us what is wrong with our bomb. So now that we have, like the SBOM, of course, like the what we like wanted to do was to, like sign all of the stuff. We started with, like binaries and like the SBOMs. So if you see, like the image, you will see that we are signing, like the tar file, and we are also, like signing, like the bomb file. At this point, we are using keys to, like sign them, and of course, that's not a great thing because if you have to, like manage your keys, that's always a big issue. Like you might get like, like maybe that key gets leaked, and then it might become an issue. We actually have a branch where we are trying out, like keyless, like signing, and that should be out, like very soon. Now that we have, like signatures, what about, like the provenance data? And what about, like attestation? So there is, like a pull request which will add that to our build. But what is, like provenance? It's in a like very, so what it is just when, how, and where our, like artifacts were built. And when you sign, like document about that, it then becomes, like an attestation. In Toto is probably one of the most popular, like format at this point. So for our, like GitHub stuff, we are using the Salsa, like provenance. So there is, like a GitHub, action for it. And for our internal stuff, we are using, like Tecton chains. It's still, like a work in progress. We have it running for our local, like A3S clusters, but not for, say, like Amazon or, like Google yet. But it should be done fast. Well, we don't have one, but since this is, like open source, we can always, like take a look at another, like project. Because I think it makes a lot of sense to actually, like see one, like example before we go and add one to our own, like workflow. So there is a link to like the spec. There are three things that are very, like important. The first one is, like the envelope, and then there is, like statement, and then there is, like a predicate. So I have one which I downloaded from KO, and this is basically the in toto spec, and this is, like the envelope. This is, like attested. You can see that, like the payload type talks about, like in toto. And when we look at, like the payload, that is basically based, like 64. So when you have a statement, payload base 64. So like the payload is base 64, like encoded. There is, like statement, and that is what, and we can use JQ to actually, like format it. And the important thing to check is, like the subject. So in case of KO, what like they are doing is their, like subject is, like the checksum file. So you see there are, so what they do is they produce KO, like binaries for different, like platforms. And so that becomes, like the subject. And then, like the predicate is what is, like generated by like GitHub. And you can see that there is the builder, like ID. So that, like tells you that this is, like this was, like created by the GitHub, like generator. And it has more, like info about how it was, like generated. So this was just a simple in toto spec. So at this point, our binaries are signed, but also our, like images are signed using, like cosign. SBOMs are generated using SIFT. Initially, when we tried to push and pull, like SBOM, we were using a new tool called OCI, like registry as like storage. But then, since we use, like cosign, we can just use that to actually push and pull, like SBOM for our like Docker images. But what do we want to do next? We have a lot of, like plugins. At this point, what we have signed is just few, like binaries. There are still some, like plugins that are not signed. We would also want to sign our, like Helm charts. Jenkins X today is installed using Terraform, like modules. We have one for, like GKE. We have one for, like Amazon. So we support all of the three, like cloud providers. But there is no way to sign, like modules at this point. I think Terraform doesn't, like support it yet. As I said, we have Tecton chains working in local, like clusters, but it's still not integrated to the point where our, like end users can just be like, hey, like I want to have, like a secure chain true, and then Jenkins X goes and installs, like Tecton chains and just does, like so it, like configures it so that it works with Amazon or Google or, like Azure. So that is something that we are trying to work on. And if you just have, like the provenance, it doesn't really mean much if your cluster can run, like anything. So we are looking at adding, like Kyverno, like policies, so that it blocks any like artifact from, running in the cluster. As I said, image, like sizes have like gone down, but we also want to move to, like distroless soon. One issue we had with SIFT was it does not generate, like SBOM at, say, like build time. So what it does is you give it a binary, it, like looks at it, and then it, like infers the BOM. Instead, what we would want is have, like SBOMs at, say, like build time. And there are tools which can, like help us do that. AppCo and, like Melang are probably very popular at this point. And also using AppCo will help us to have, like reproducible builds. Conclusion? Well, it's so, like 3 months back, we had almost, like nothing. At this point, I think we are in a bit of, like better shape. There are a lot of, like simple things that you can do. You don't have to jump into the more, like complex stuffs. If you have, so I think SigStore, for example, has, like helped a lot to like make all of those, like complex tasks, like simpler for us. There is a lot of things to learn, but you will have fun as you go. I would also like to thank, like Osama, who is our Google, like summer of code. So he's, like a contributor, and he did a lot of the work, and we would not be here if he was not our intern. We are always looking for more, like contributors. You can join us. There's this links to our Slack channels. And if you have any questions, if we have time left, yes.
So Jenkins X right now does not have any vendor support.
Nope.
And CloudBees has its product,
Jenkins.
Jenkins CI.
Yes.
So what does Jenkins X give us that Jenkins CI doesn't? And we also get support from CloudBees with Jenkins CI.
Jenkins X used to be a CloudBees product. It started at CloudBees. Right. So.
But they went the Jenkins CI route.
Yes. I mean, at this point, I would say it's. Let's see, what does it have? Well, it's not based on Java, I guess, but I think it's more native to, like Kubernetes compared to Jenkins. Like you can have Jenkins CI, which runs on, like Kubernetes, but we were built ground up for like cloud native and like Kubernetes.
Jenkins X in
Right.
clusters right now, but,
okay.
But we're getting pushed from the executives because there is no vendor support.
Right.
And so if there's a problem, who do we call?
I mean, we do have a Slack channel, but again, like I said, it is still, like an open source project. And yes, I mean, of course, we are looking for, like vendor support, but that will take time. I mean, to be, like honest, it's not going to happen tomorrow.
You get a production deployment.
Right.
And Jenkins X is doing the deployment, and I'm a Jenkins certified engineer.
Right.
So if something goes wrong and it's 9 o'clock at night on a Friday.
Yes.
level 1.
Right. Yes.
There's going to be an issue there.
Yes. So, like I said, about like a year back, we did not even have any like maintainers. And what I mean by that is like CloudBees left, and then the other people left, and nobody had like access.
You guys are looking for an adopter.
Were we? Yeah. Of course. but yes, I mean, now we have 6 like maintainers, and it's like growing. So we have plans to like think about like commercial support, but of course not for this year. I mean, it will take some time. We have like a governing like body at this point, which we did not have. We did not have any of that 3 months back. So we have like a TOC, and the main task of like TOC is to keep like Jenkins X going. So that's the biggest problem.
Yeah. I like the product.
Yeah. We use, like Tecton, yeah, so I forgot. Great.
Yeah, I like it,
Yeah.
but it's just the fact that there's like,
Right.
that there's something goes wrong in the middle of the deployment.
I understand, yes. Because I was running Jenkins X at my, previous work. And, well, I did it because I am the maintainer. So if something breaks, of course, I can go in and fix it. But I do,
like
understand.
OLED.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
you're OLED for Jenkins X.
yes. So we have plans. I think that's just what I have in mind. Like, we are planning to go for, commercial support, and that is something that the TOC is looking at. So it's not dead yet. I think that's the important part, because people thought that it was dead. So